Welcome back, everybody. This is the third session on forgiveness with beloved Baba. If you don't know me, I'm Laurent Weichberger. I'm very happy to be here. This is my wife, Vanessa. This is going to be interactive yet again. I prefer interactive. What I would like is if you're going to read your quote or share your experience, please share your name so everybody can know who you are. I'd like us to honor one another and know that Baba is within each one of us. That's a big one for me. So how did I get involved with forgiveness? You know, Don did this young people's group. I showed you that in the earlier session where he wanted to pass the torch to the younger generation. And on the 7th session of that, the 7th meeting, his whole theme for the weekend was forgiveness. And that was when he told us that it was his firm belief that at this time in human history, the greatest spiritual work in the world was that of forgiveness. Well, this was news to me. I took it very seriously. And the way Don spoke, I told you he was very directive. He wasn't really an asker. He was more of a teller. And Shilpa, it was more like this. He would say, and you need to do forgiveness work in your own backyard before you're qualified to speak about it to others. That's how he would talk. And you can feel that, right? With the finger and all that, you can feel it. So he would do that, right, Yaakov? And you know where he learned it? From Baba. Baba would do that to him. And Baba would say, you do it. And, right, coming from the avatar of the age. Well, Don had some of that fire, that power, right? And when he said that to me, he said, to us, because there was a group, but I felt it was like to me, he said, you need to do forgiveness work in your own backyard. I knew exactly what he meant. It wasn't literal backyard. It was, what do I need to forgive? And immediately I knew I've got to forgive my father for his suicide. I never forgave him. I knew it like that. There was no question in my mind. And I was allergic to because you should. Because you should was always that sense of like, to be more spiritual, you need to forgive or you should forgive. I don't like that kind of spirituality. I wanted it to come from my heart. And until that time with Don in that session, I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel like I was wholehearted about it. But then I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I know what my homework is. But if my father's not alive, I was thinking in the session while he's talking about all that, I'm thinking, well, how am I going to do that? My father's not even alive. But I didn't tell anybody what my homework was. It was just internal. There's no way they could have known. So I was being a little mischievous. And I said, well, then I've got a question, Don. And I said, it's really for the whole group because there was a whole bunch of people piled in this room. And he said, what's the question? And I said, well, does the other person need to be involved in my forgiveness? And he said, that's a really good question. And Don was also the type where he would turn it over to the whole room rather than answering it himself, because he was genuinely interested in what everybody had to say. And he had the humility to say to us, you know, I don't have all the answers. He would say, I don't know the mechanics of forgiveness, but you all will figure it out. That's what he would say. And he'd use his hand. You all will figure that out. And he'd say, so what do you think about Little Bear's question? He would say, what do you think of Little Bear's question? Does the other person need to be involved? And the room split into 3 camps immediately. There was they absolutely have to be involved or else you can't do forgiveness. And then there was the camp of, well, they don't need to be involved. Of course you could forgive somebody without them even knowing about it. And then there was the third camp of watching the debate. They were on the sidelines taking very interest. They're very interested in this, what would come of all this.
Which side to take?
Well, they weren't even necessarily going to take a side. They were just watching this whole thing happen, you know. And one of my friends, who shall remain nameless because he's still around, he said, oh, no. You have to involve the other person or else it can't be complete forgiveness. And I loved him and I still love him and I know him. So I said, what if it's my father and he committed suicide? And he said, well, and Don said, well, turning up the heat a little bit. And this fellow said, well, then your sister can be a proxy for your father. And I said, well, you don't know my sister. That'll never work. So I decided not to take any more advice from the group and to do it on my own. But I still had no idea what I was doing. I just had no idea what I was doing. I knew I had to do it at this point because I was committed to doing it, but I had no idea how to do it. Like Don had said, you all will figure out the mechanics. He liked the word mechanics. So I went off to India with my mother and my sister, by the way. For their first time, I promised to take them to Mehrabad. And we had an incredible trip. And I didn't tell them a word about what I was doing, which is good. And in the samadhi, I said to Baba and my father. And so my father, in German, we say puppy, which is German for like daddy. So I invoked my father's presence. I said, Puppy, Baba, I don't know what I'm doing. But Puppy, I want to forgive you for your suicide. So I forgive you in Baba's presence. We're both in you, Baba. We're all together in your oneness. You're the avatar. I don't know what I'm doing. My father's somewhere. I don't know how this works, but Puppy, in Baba's presence, I forgive you. Inside the samadhi. I was probably whispering, right? I don't want to make a fuss. And there was no voice of God. There was no drama. There was nothing. If anything, it was like if you were holding a little bird and you open your hand and the bird flies out. There was no, it wasn't dramatic. But there was a subtle, for me, a subtle shift. But you know how the mind can be, right? So after I leave the samadhi, immediately it was, did anything happen? Did my father hear that? Did Baba hear that? Like, what is this? And I kind of just let it go, and I thought, I don't know if I'll ever know the answer to these types of questions. But then something happened. I was at dinner at the Mayor Pilgrim Retreat, the new one up on the hill, the big new one. And you know now, different groups are coming from all over the world. It's extraordinary. So now there's a whole group from Persia, from Iran and other places, and China and Argentina. It's extraordinary. And so there's a whole table full of Persians. And Vanessa and I love the Persian community. And we have many Persian friends. So I got my plate and I'm thinking, now where am I going to sit? And I'm looking around and there's all these Persians. So I'm thinking, I'm sitting over there with the Persians. So I sit down and they're all speaking in Farsi. I don't speak Farsi, but I love the sound of Farsi. It sounds beautiful. And I love their energy. They're like the Italians of the Middle East or something. It's incredible. And they're chatting away and I'm just minding my own business. And one of them is a friend of mine. Her name is Neda, beautiful young woman. And Neda is speaking in Farsi to all them. And eventually she has compassion for me and she says, Laurent, do you know what we're talking about? I said, I don't know Farsi. I have no idea what you're talking about. And she said, we're talking about one couplet in Rumi's last poem to his son, Sultan Vlad. And I'm thinking to myself, this is why I love the Persians. The whole conversation is about one couplet from one poem from Rumi. This is exactly why I love the Persians. And I said, what's the couplet? So she says it in Persian, in Farsi. And I said, what does it mean? And she translates it for me on the spot. And it's super beautiful. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. And she said, I know, that's why we're talking about it. So I said, well, I'd love to read the whole poem sometime. And she says, yeah, well, it's an incredible poem. It was literally Rumi's last poem to his son before he passed away. It's called On the Deathbed. Rumi didn't give titles to his poems, but now they call it that because he was on his deathbed. Okay, so there's a punchline to this. So the next day, I'm minding my own, having a cup of chai outside. You know that wall with all the beautiful tiles and all that, welcome to my world and all. It's so beautiful, right? The sun is coming through the dappled light on everything. The sun is there, the air is there. Having my chai. And Neda sees me. She walks right up to me. She hands me the poem, the whole poem, because she remembered I wanted to read it. She found the poem. She printed it out. It's in Farsi and in English. And I'm just stunned. For me, this is an experience of Baba's love. And it's a terrible translation. You know those translations where it reads like a VCR manual? You're like, who translated this? What is this? But the heart was there, right? Because Neda's love was there. Rumi's poem is there in Farsi. And I thought to myself, well, I've got to do a translation of this myself because this is such a terrible translation. It's almost unreadable. So I made a deal with myself that when I got home, I would translate the entire poem. And I did. It took days, and I needed two native Farsi speakers to help me. But I translated the entire thing. And here's one of the lines. If you can, come and forgive me, or else be cruel and leave. And when I didn't realize it until I got home, but when I translated it, I was like, there's my answer. Baba came full circle for me in this poem that he gave me at Mehrabad right after I forgave my father. And it's Rumi, who's the father of Sultan Valed, saying to his son, come and forgive me. It's a father-son story of forgiveness from Rumi. Like, I just said, well, thank you, Baba. And I felt like my father and Baba and I were all clear. Okay, so I got back to America and I had my first homework assignment done. I did it. I told Don about it. He said, you got to write this up and put it in this book and blah, blah, blah. And we did that. And then all these forgiveness assignments started flooding into my life. It was like, once I did that, it gave me so many opportunities to forgive. It was extremely painful. And too many stories to tell, but the gist of it was I was now in full swing with forgiveness from that moment on. And at the same time as that was going on, my daughter said to me, Daddy, I went to a concert at the university. Now, she was in high school at this time. She said, Daddy, I went to a concert, and it was an African man named Jean-Paul Samputu. And he sang beautiful African music. But between songs, he spoke to us about forgiveness. I think you'd really like him. I thought, that's very unusual. And so I was in this mode now with Don around forgiveness. It had become the focus of our work together really strongly. So I thought, well, I'm going to call this Jean-Paul Samputu. So I looked online and I got the number for his agent. I called his agent. You know, I'm from New York, right? So I just pick up the phone and call his agent. And the agent says, what is it? And I said, I'd like to speak with Jean-Paul. And she said, well, here, let me give you his number. Yeah. So I called, because he had just been in my town having this concert, right? Because my daughter just came back from his concert. So I just called him, and his phone rang, and I said, is this Jean-Paul? And he said, no, this is Vincent. Let me hand the phone to Jean-Paul. So I'm telling you the Vincent part for a reason. There's a reason for all this. So now the phone is in Jean-Paul's hand, and he says, hi, this is Jean-Paul. I said, Jean-Paul, you don't know me. My name is Laurent. Well, I said Laurent because he speaks French. And he said, oh, I'm happy to talk to you. And I said, well, you see, my daughter said I should talk to you because she was at your concert and she said you spoke about forgiveness. And he said, yes, forgiveness. I said, are you still here in Flagstaff? Because that's where we were living. He said, no, we're driving to a Rwandan party in Phoenix. They're having a party for me, the Rwandans. And I said, well, I would like to interview you about forgiveness because she said you spoke about forgiveness. And he said, can you talk now? He's in the car driving to a party. And I said, sure. I said, I need to take notes. And so I got my pen and my paper and I wanted to write all this down. And I said, okay, I'm ready. He said, what do you want to know? I said, well, what's your story? What are you talking about forgiveness? And he said, well, my story is that I was living in Rwanda. I'm Rwandan. And when the Hutus took power, the government sponsored the genocide of the Tutsi. And my best friend, Vincent, killed my mother and my father, 3 of my brothers and my sister. And so when all this was going down, when all this was going down, and he said it happened very fast. Within less than a year, 800,000 Tutsis were murdered in less than a year. And he said, it happened so fast that as soon as this was all coming down, my father said, he's telling the story, he rewinds, he says, my father said to me, Jean-Paul, it's going to get really, really bad, and they're going to start by targeting people like you who are famous, because he was a singer, he's a musician. They're going to start with making a statement by killing people like you. So his father said, Jean-Paul, you need to leave immediately. So he says to his father, I don't want to leave you. And his father said, no, you need to leave right now. Get out of here. So he literally ran out of the country. Like, he told me the entire story. He didn't tell it all in the car, but I'll tell you later the whole story, right? So he's telling me, like, I had to go. So he left. And this all happened like really fast. And after the genocide, he went back home and nobody was there. And he said, where's my family? And his neighbors just said, he said, what? Who did that? And they said, it was Vincent. And he's like, Vincent? Now, Vincent, of course, was a Hutu, but it was his friend. And he said, Laurent, when they said it was Vincent, I lost my mind. Because it's like friends, but different tribes, right? He said, I lost my mind. And I just walked out of Rwanda and I went to Uganda, and I didn't know what to do. He said, I smoked marijuana, I used alcohol, nothing would help, nothing, zero. And he said, eventually I met a minister who said to me, could we read the Bible together? And he said to me, Jean-Paul said to me, I tried everything else, why not? Why not try it? So he started reading the Bible with the minister, and he said, it was the first time I felt any peace at all, was starting to read the Bible, like I was starting to feel a little bit of relief. And he said, but I was so angry, and I was in so much turmoil. And then he said, I was reading the Bible alone, and I heard God. And God said, unless you can forgive the people who did this, you will never be healed. And he said, I knew I had to forgive, but I didn't want to. I did not want to. So he said, I went back to Rwanda, and I said, I need to find Vincent. I need to forgive him, my friend, for this. But he couldn't even find Vincent. So he went everywhere looking, and they said, no, Vincent's in prison. Because what happened was, so then the Rwandan scene completely shifted, and the Hutus who were in power were put in prison, and then the Tutsi took over the government, and then it was like the Nuremberg trials. They did all these trials of everybody. So now all these Hutus are in prison waiting their trial. And they didn't even deny it. They weren't saying I didn't do it. They weren't saying I'm not guilty. They said, yeah, I did it. So Jean-Paul goes into the prison, and he finds Vincent. He says, Vincent, did you do that? Did you kill my family? Vincent said, yes, I did. And Jean-Paul said, God told me I need to forgive you or else I won't be healed. And I don't want to forgive you, but guess what? I forgive you. And so now what happened was then Vincent was taken out of prison and put on the stand. And the judge says, well, Jean-Paul, here we have Vincent. He killed your mother and your father and your 3 brothers and your sister. How shall we punish him? What do you say? And Jean-Paul said, no punishment. I forgive him. And there was pin drop silence. The judge said, you forgive him? He said, yes, I forgive him. And the judge said to Vincent, then go home. So Vincent went home. And Vincent's wife said, well, if Jean-Paul forgives you, I also forgive you. And here's the punchline. Then Jean-Paul went to Vincent's house. And then they started touring the world together, giving forgiveness seminars together. Vincent and Jean-Paul. Now, I heard this story from Jean-Paul, and I'm thinking to myself, he must be a saint or something. Like, what kind of story is this? I've never heard a story like this in my life. And then I started looking at the things I still have grievances about. I'm like, what am I holding on to? My God. I'm holding on to that, and look at what he went to, like, there's no comparison. And then Vanessa has a favorite part of the story, which is that, do you want to tell her, or should I tell her? The mountain?
Well, I don't have the mic, so go ahead.
Okay. So at one point in all this, he's struggling so much, and he goes to a holy mountain and is praying in Africa. And he said, when I was struggling and praying to God, at one point an angel came to me in my struggle, and the angel said, "That which you cannot forgive, you will become." It was very powerful to him. And he said, I know that, he said so many things, but he said, I know that my gift is love. I love. And so I cannot hate, I have to forgive. And he goes around the world helping people with forgiveness. So there's a tie-in here, which is that now Don's doing all this work on forgiveness, and Jean-Paul is telling me all about forgiveness, and I'm doing both at the same time. And then Don passed away, and I sent out an email. So when Don passed away, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Everybody wanted to know what happened. They wanted to know where to go, what to do, what to think. My phone was just burning up. And I thought, this is crazy. So I just made an email of everything I knew and could say, and just sent it out to the whole world so that I could get off the phone. And I said, this is when the funeral's going to be in London. This is what's going to happen. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. And everything started to calm down. And I got one email back from Jean-Paul. And he said, "You're coming to London?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I'm in London." So I thought, wow, that's weird. So I went to the funeral, as I told you earlier. I did the funeral thing. And then I went from the funeral in some limousine that they hired for Don's funeral to lunch with Jean-Paul. It was very bizarre. It was like a strange movie. And when I sat with Jean-Paul over lunch, he said, "Laurent, would you write my biography?" And I said, "Yes." So I went from working with Don on Don's biography and Meher Baba, and then Don saying the most important work is forgiveness, to this forgiveness guru saying, "Would you write my biography?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I'm still working with Jean-Paul. But there was this like continuum on the same day as Don's funeral. It was so wild. Like Baba wasn't wasting a second. Really, there wasn't even like an afternoon in between. It was like I went from the church to Jean-Paul. Anyway, between all of those stories and Mani and other people's stories, which we're about to talk about, I'm convinced that Baba's on to something with this forgiveness work, okay? Now, some of you have forgiveness quotes. Would anybody like to start with a quote that they have? Go ahead. Oh, do we have a microphone for that, Phil?
Yes. I'm loud enough.
But I think he wants it on the film.
And Laurent, did you ever interview Vincent?
He was poisoned and killed by the Rwandan government. So Jean-Paul remains a threat to the Rwandan government because they made Jean-Paul, the Rwandan government made Jean-Paul an ambassador for peace and forgiveness. But there's a lot of politics involved. Okay, go ahead.
This is from Listen Humanity. Forget the past and make the most of the present. Keep your own hearts clean. Learn to love each other first before you tell others about my love for one and all. Give love, receive love, gather love. Everything else is dissolved eventually in the truth of divine love. Meher Baba.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
My name is Robert. Here's my quote. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar, and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. That's from the New Testament, Matthew chapter 5, 23, 24.
Yep, those are the words of Yeshua. And so what he's saying, if I could interpret it, is forgiveness is more important than offerings at the altar. It's incredible.
Right. What I get from it is I can't come to give something if I'm still holding a resentment.
Beautiful.
You
Beautiful.
know, I mean, I do 12-step work. I'm in AA. I remember going to my ex-girlfriend about an amends, and I caught myself in the middle of a resentment while I was making the amends about something else, and then I had to call her back about making an amends about my amends.
Wow.
So that was embarrassing, but
Wow.
I did it.
Thank you, Robert. Did you want to do yours, Jaco?
Sure. I love you. Do not worry about your weaknesses. Eventually they will go. Even if they linger, love will one day consume them. Everything disappears in the ocean of love. Because I love you, you have a pool of love within you. When you feel wretched, when you fall in your weakness, have a dip in that pool of love. Refresh yourself in that pool of my love within you. It is always there. Even if you wash your weaknesses every day in that pool, it will remain clear. Don't worry, Baba loves you. That is what really matters. Avatar Meher Baba in Gift of Love.
Thank you, Jaco. David, you want to do yours?
Yeah, my name's David, and this is a quote from St. Francis. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven.
Beautiful.
I'm Susan. Whether men soar to outer space or dive to the bottom of the deepest ocean, they will find themselves as they are, unchanged, because they will not have forgiven themselves nor remember to exercise the charity of forgiveness.
Beautiful.
Meher Baba.
Beautiful. Are these great quotes or what? I think we have one over here. Thank you, Jaco. In the pink.
Then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. This is from Yeshua, Jesus Christ in the Bible, in Matthew 18, 21 and 22.
That's a big number. It's a big number. Oh, I think somebody else has the mic.
Yes, I'm John, and my quote reads, let the past be gone. Why worry about past wrongs? Every person has done something very wrong. God is there to forgive, and that's from Lord Meher. And I just wanted to say that reminded me of something, that we're all souls that have had many, many lifetimes. And when someone does something to us that's mean or, something that isn't right, if we can think that chances are that we did that to that person in a previous lifetime, that helps us forgive.
Thank you, John. You got one?
I'm Ralph. I'm reminded that Muhammad said, I ask forgiveness 70 times a day.
Thank you.
Meher Baba said, remember one thing. God is all-merciful. He is eternally in bliss. He cannot forgive one thing, and that is posing. being a scoundrel, if one pretends to be a saint, God will not forgive it.
Thank you. Thank you. You got one?
I have one. Roberta. When I see someone who is upset with Baba, I tell that person to repeat over and over, Baba, I am angry with you, and I am sorry. Please forgive me and help me to resign to your wish and will. Arnavaz Dhanachanji in Gift of God.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, we got another one.
I'm Lynn. Excuse me. I am the Ancient One, and I have the divine authority to forgive anyone of anything. And it's Meher Baba from Lord Meher.
That's a perfect segue for a story. Do you have one?
Yeah.
Can I tell my story first and then you'll go?
Yeah, sure.
Because that's a great segue. When I was doing this research and writing with Don on forgiveness and the other book, there's a video of Baba's sister Mani, and she is explaining Baba's hand gestures, because she and Erich and a few of the Mandali who were extremely close could decipher all these gestures that Baba came up with. It wasn't American Sign Language. He made up his own language. And she said, there's something very interesting, and you can see it on the video, and it's in the book, Forgiveness with Meher Baba, the transcript of this video. But she said, you know, when Baba would say, I give you my love, he would say, I give you my love. But he would also say, I forgive you. She said, it was the same gesture for two words. I give you my love and I forgive you is the same gesture. So I want to invite you all to try this gesture and see how it feels. She said it's like reaching down into the depths, and it comes up and it's like a wave washing over the beach. And she said, receding, leaving not a chicken track on the sand, is what she said. Not a chicken track, that's what she said. So it's, I give you my love, or it's, I forgive you. Isn't that extraordinary? Yeah. Okay. What's yours? Oh, yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
Forgiveness, it is not an occasional act. It is a constant attitude. Martin Luther King Jr.
Isn't that incredible? Now, he paid the price for that constant attitude. We know that. But forgiveness is not an occasional act. It's a constant attitude. When I read that, I was stunned. Because for me, he's reframing it as almost like a lifestyle. Yeah, you got one, Rick?
Yeah, Rick. The only sin which God does not forgive is hypocrisy. The hypocrite deceives himself and others too. These days, the hypocritical saints have increased in such numbers that, though I am the ocean of compassion, it's become nauseating even to me. From Lord Mayor.
Extraordinary, isn't it? It's extraordinary. Okay. And I think we're ready to segue into the exercise. I've got a couple of exercises for you. How are we doing on time? We good? So what happened was, in all this process and work, I started giving forgiveness seminars, starting with the one Don asked me to do in Los Angeles. I did it all over the place. I did it in India. I did it here, there, and everywhere. And one day, after all this work, I was in the refectory at the Meher Spiritual Center. I just had a conversation with somebody about forgiveness. And I remember Don said, you know, I don't know the mechanics of forgiveness, but you all will figure it out. And I was standing in the original kitchen and I saw this flash of this diagram in my experience. And what this is, I'm going to go over it with you and then I'm going to ask you a question. It's a 10-step cycle of forgiveness that I was just shown. And it starts with identify what happened. I'm getting to the point where I actually need glasses. Identify what happened is number one. It's literally what happened. Clinical. No emotion. What happened? Something happened. Could be anything. 2, identify feelings about what happened. How do you feel about one? 3, feel those feelings. 4, share what happened with somebody safe. By the way, the point here is a life cycle of forgiveness. That's the context, a life cycle of forgiveness. In other words, it's my understanding that this is part of the process. Not all of it, it's just a framework, it's just a glimpse of a process around forgiveness. Identify what happened. Identify feelings about what happened. Feel those feelings. Share with someone safe what happened. Share what happened with the other person involved. Now this one is different, right? So here is someone safe. Here it's with the other person or people involved. Acknowledgement of what happened. Acknowledgement of feelings. Do you see the difference? Acknowledgement of what happened is one thing. Acknowledgement of the feelings is something else. Giving or asking forgiveness in person or via some medium. I say via some medium because, like in my case, the medium was Baba and the Samadhi. But it could be an email, it could be a letter, it could be a phone call, whatever the case may be. Giving or asking forgiveness, because it depends on what's going on in the situation. Who knows what the situation is? Giving or asking forgiveness in person or via some medium is 8. 9, letting it go wholeheartedly. Didn't Baba bring all the stuff up and then say, okay, Jane Do? How do you say in Hindi? Jane Do? What does it mean? Let it go? Let go now. Enough. Right? But Baba wouldn't do the spiritual bypassing. He wouldn't just sweep it under the rug. It would all come up. He'd say, how did you feel, Robert? Right? Shilpa, how did you feel? Talk about it in front of Baba even. He was the one conducting all this. And then he'd say, okay, now, Janido, let it go now. Enough, right? 10 is being in the present moment, moving on in freedom. So I was doing all this work, this life cycle, all this work. And my friend, who knew I was doing all this work, calls me. I was pulling into a parking lot at a hotel because I was doing Java work with Yaakov. I had to go to a client and talk to them about Java. Pull into my parking spot at the hotel. My phone rings and a friend of mine says, I need to talk to you about forgiveness. I said, okay, what's going on? He said, I know what's happening. I know exactly what's happening. I have to forgive my ex because she's taking me out of my present moment. He was passionate about it. He says, I see it now. If I don't forgive her, I don't have my present moment. I need my present moment back. And I said, that's really beautiful. I said, can I put that in my book? And he said, yeah. He said, it all makes sense. And so he did, right? But you see, being in the present moment, moving on in freedom. Now here's the question. This is part of the interactive session, right? And I've got markers again, found some markers. If you feel bold enough to come up here, I want to ask you to do one thing. 2 words. Which one of these is easy for you? Which one of these is hard for you to do? Now, you might be surprised, but you're going to see different easy and hards all over this thing by the end of this exercise. But again, these are the suggested steps of a life cycle. I'm not saying it's thorough and complete. It's my understanding. Would you please be willing to come up here if you want and write either easy, thank you, Cypress. Oh, you get to pick a color. Oh, yeah, we can move it. Yes, self-effacement. Which one of these steps is easy for you? Which one of these steps is hard for you? Try to pick one, but if you feel inspired and there's more than one, that's fine too. Come on. Cello. Which one of these steps is easy for you? Which one of these steps is hard for you?
They're all hard.
I see. Number 3 is hard. 5 is hard. 8 is easy. Oh, 5 hard for many. 7's easy. 2's easy. Okay.
Once you've gotten past all this crap,
One of the things that emerges from this exercise is what may be hard for one person may be easy for another. What may be easy for another person may be hard for another. We're going to look at this.
That's true. I'm like, I don't know, the rest are hard. I'm just not going to write it. They're all hard. The rest of them are hard.
They're all hard.
The rest of them are feeling what I'm feeling. That's
Vengeance is mine.
you better believe.
How much time do you have now?
Huh?
How much more time?
You have into 25 minutes.
Okay, pretty good. Number 1 is identify what happened. I've had some people say to me, that's hard for them. That's such a blur, what happened. Like, wow, what actually happened? It's fascinating. Other people say, no, that's the easy part. I know what happened.
Especially from my point of view. There's no other point of view. What are you talking about?
So what's number 5, Laurent?
5 is share what happened with the other person or persons involved. That's hard for you?
No. You just lay it down.
No?
That's easy.
I can't tell her that.
You can't cheat. You can't cheat. She's watching.
No, isn't it fascinating?
Oh, yeah.
So 9, letting it go wholeheartedly. I see both easy and hard up there. That's very interesting. Some people find letting go easy. Some people find letting go hard. Hard. Oh, here, let me fix that.
Do this. Top, like this.
Maybe it's dry.
Yeah, we needed
I can always use another one.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There's magic, huh?
Oh, number 1, identify what happened. I see both easy and hard on identify what happened. Oh, Yaakov's coming up. He's allowed to do twice. Oh, identify feelings about what happened can be hard. Feel those feelings can be easy. Could also be hard. Some people find letting it go wholeheartedly easy. I think it's a unanimous share what happened with the other persons involved difficult, right? Because that's like a confrontation, right? That tends to be the most static-y. Is this interesting?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to get some volunteers. Can you share your experience? If you came up here to write on the board, somebody have a Oh, as you wish. Alida, tell us. We need the mic. Alida has Cyprus.
So the challenge I have is with a brother, and he became hateful to me at a fairly young age, like more than 40 years ago. So that was annoying, and it was one of those things. We lived in a little community, and if Willie was there, then I wasn't allowed to be there. If they're going to have a picnic, they could pick one or the other, but according to my brother, we couldn't be in the same place. So that went on for years, and then I learned later one of the reasons he was trying to avoid me and disliked me and was so hateful was that he had written a false deed and gotten my mother to sign it, and so then he got all the land and she didn't get to leave it to me. And so that was a hard thing, and he's not someone you can talk to because he's the kind of person that would hurt you. So I mean, it's not safe. And so and I can go through cycles of forgiveness, but I'm not the only person around there that he's hurt. And every time I hear another story about so one of the things I'm learning is because you forgive someone doesn't mean that they change their behavior.
No, it doesn't mean that at all.
It doesn't mean that at all. And
Forgiveness
I think
is not control.
Yes, not control at all. And so what and so letting it go wholehearted, like I've worked at forgiving him, but then when these other things that he's done to other people come up, the anger comes back up for me. So there you go. That's it.
Do you have one? Let me respond first to Alida, and then you can go. Alida, can I respond to that?
What was the question?
No, I'm asking you a question. May I respond to what you said?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So one thing that happened was around the Charles Haynes thing, I asked Charles, because I had the opportunity, he was giving me a big talk in Mariposa, and I was doing all this forgiveness work, and I said, could you speak about forgiveness? And he did. He said some beautiful things. One of the things he said was, remember, Laurent, forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Yeah. I thought, wow, that's huge, right? So it certainly doesn't mean controlling anybody's behavior. Forgiveness is forgiveness. It's about your experience of the whole situation. Whether they change or not, who knows? And I want to add one thing. You have the right to forgive and set a boundary and change the nature of the relationship. It doesn't have to go back to what it was. You can't necessarily force it to be something other than what it is, but you can set boundaries and say, right, now that I know how it's going to be, we're going to change the contract. Okay? What have you got?
You want to say, this is me.
Can you put it to your mouth?
This is, I said, it's, letting it go wholeheartedly, it is easy.
Easy for you?
Yeah, easy. And this one is difficult for me. That number 5, share what happened with the other persons involved.
Why is that difficult?
Why is that difficult is because I want to let it go. I don't want to make my present moment unhappy. So that is my, it is one thing I want to admit, it is not a very easy thing. Now I am in my 70s. So it is not an easy thing. This easy thing has come not in the, it is not from my childhood or something. From childhood, my mother's policy, because my parents were, they were Baba lovers since my childhood. Always she used to say, let it go. If anything, she used to say, let it go.
In Hindi or in English?
In Telugu.
Telugu? How do you say in Telugu?
Odile, leave it. Leave it. Oh, amma, something happened, this like this. Then, Odile, let it go. And she never used to say something will happen to them. They'll learn later. Nothing, she said. She never used to say that. She used to say, Odile, leave it. Sometimes as a kid we should go, sometimes even little bit of, even when studying in medical college or any place, whenever I used to complain, I am not wrong, but still why those people they say, Odile, leave it. Leave it.
Thank
So
you.
then she used to say that. So that is one thing, and another, that was in my childhood. But I was not, see, being a human, naturally we have all emotions. It is very, very easy to say than to put in practice. But that Baba's message, if really you follow, Baba's message is mostly, message is love. Where love is there, that hatred, there's no chance of hatred. Even some people, if you try to hate them also, with love you can win their hearts. So that is even in family, so many times people, they keep fighting, so many quarrels happen. But I feel sometimes if somebody mediator or somebody just make them to come together, then you feel that inner happiness, you get it. You that is there. That is that forgiveness. That if you forgive others, it is not you are doing something good to others. You are doing good to yourself. See, psychiatrist's main thing is what? Psychology is very important for the health. It is not the physical health, what you eat or dieting, all other things. Psychology is the best. That is one of the greatest. Psychiatry is the topic of this. That is for most of the ill health. So that for the psychiatry, for what is the reason is that keeping that mind is like a devil. See, heart is very good if you think with the heart, but mind, it keeps on working. So how much you want to control, but that control, how you get that control? We are all Baba lovers. It is very easy. Baba said in easy ways, many things. He put all his messages in practice. If you wholeheartedly, if you try to put the practice, love and service, and forget and forgive.
Jai Baba, thank you.
Don't
Jai
worry,
Baba.
be happy.
Jai
All
Baba.
these things.
Thank you. So now she reminds me of a story. Phil?
No, you can hold on.
Oh, but
Just leave it there.
okay. So one time Vanessa and I were at Maribad, and we met a couple there, and suddenly we're just doing everything together. The four of us were just eating together, walking together, going to Samadhi together. And it came out that I was doing this forgiveness work. So we decided to do a forgiveness seminar, just the four of us. Why not? It went great. It was very intense, what came out. Because sometimes when you have a small, intimate group, it can get very super intense, right? Because a lot of people can become a little different energy. But the four of us did tremendously hard work. It got very real. It was at Maribad. And we wrapped it up, and the other woman, it was my wife and I and another couple, the other woman said, but now that this is finished, I'm really happy that we did it, but I don't feel complete. I said, well, what would help you feel complete? She said, I don't know. I said, well, we all bandied about ideas about what we could do to close it off. And I don't even know who came up with it. Do you remember? But somebody said, let's take the papers that we were working with, because I had a whole process and a whole form and everything that I had come up with and how to do it. And we had all this writing about all this pain and suffering that we had experienced and forgiveness and blah, blah, blah. Lots of papers. Somebody said, let's go down to Lower Maribad and burn it in Baba's Duni. I thought, oh, that's a good idea. It had been raining, so it was no chance of there being like a problem with fire spreading or anything like happens in America, start a forest fire or something. There was no danger like that. In fact, there was like a little bit of water at the bottom of the duni. So we went down there, and it was getting dark, so it was like sunset time. And I built a little platform in there with some wood. I don't know how I found the wood, but we did that. I had a lighter, and we burned it all. It burned really nicely. And it was beautiful. And we're at Maribad. It's incredible. And I looked at her and I said, do you feel complete now? And she said, yes, I do. I said, good, let's go. So we were leaving, and I stopped. I turned back and I looked at the duni, and I thought, let me just check. And I had a flashlight, so I looked inside the duni pit, and there was one tiny slip of paper that had not burned. A little bit of white. The rest was all black ashes. I thought, well, I wonder what that is. So I looked with my flashlight, bent down in there, and there was 2 words that did not burn. Feelings feel. So the idea is that in all the writing that we had done in this forgiveness work, everything burned except those 2 words that were written did not burn. And Vanessa and I talk about this all the time when we talk about how difficult forgiveness work can be. I say, yeah, because feelings feel. Or she'll say, yeah, feelings feel. There's something to this, right? There's something to this feelings. I talk about it with some people who are, new to Baba, and Rumi talks about it, other people talk about it. Love, feelings. According to Baba, love, feelings, all that is the closest to God. From that feeling realm comes thought. From thought comes energy. From energy comes this matter. And then when you go back consciously with awareness through energy, then thinking, then feeling, and then you return to oneness. So the feeling state is for real. There's something going. Baba says it's an illusion. Fine, I get it. But boy, it doesn't feel like an illusion when you're feeling those feelings. My God. Isn't it? All right. I think we have a few more minutes for Q&A. Yeah? Yes? You like this?
My wife went to a workshop a while ago, and this is reminding me of it. And she came home, and they were working on forgiveness. And so I said to her, how did it go? She says, I found something very profound. And I said, what's that? She goes, this definition of forgiveness. I said, what was it? Crazy. She said, forgiveness is the acceptance that you can't change what happened. And I was looking at her, I'm like, I said, say that again? Because I was just getting it real. She goes, the acceptance, that's the part, the acceptance that you can't change what happened.
Beautiful. Can I give you another version of that I heard? And this is attributed to 2 different people, so you can figure out who actually said it. Oh, I don't need this. The one I heard is, forgiveness means giving up all hope for a better past. I love that. Usually people laugh, but there's so much truth in it. Forgiveness means giving up all hope for a better past. Wow. Yeah, of course. Julie, you can always say something.
Is that path or past?
Both.
Through a big lot of therapy and forgiveness around my brother, who was my best friend, and then he sexually molested me for years. The trauma of the betrayal of trust was deep, and my theme for my life is learning to trust. And when I finally got to the point of one of the brilliant questions in my therapist asked me when I started was, what do you want to get out of this? And I was shocked that I actually wrote, I want to forgive myself. So I went through that process, and I did, and then I had the amazing experience of confronting my brother, who was actually in prison for the same kind of thing. And then he apologized on the phone. When the phone, you only get so much time. And when he knew the time was just about to cut off, he said, I'm sorry, and hung up.
Wow.
And so it was big, but it felt like, did I forgive? I gave myself. I felt free about that. Did I really forgive him? Because those feelings are still come up. I was at my mom's house, and I would never tell him when I was there visiting. She's in Wisconsin. And I heard his voice. He didn't know that I was there because I flew. My car wasn't there. And I heard him coming. And I went, oh, no, he's here. He's here. What am I going to do? And so I ran into the bathroom, and I closed the door, and I said, Baba, these are the words that I kept telling myself at that time.
and still do. How do I come from love? That's what I want to do. I don't know how to do this. How do I come from love? And I heard him say, look for me in him. I said, how do I do that? And he said, look into his eyes. You will see me. So I left the bathroom, went in the kitchen, and I'm like, oh, he's not in here yet. So I was standing by the refrigerator, and he walked in the back door. And he walked in like, Jules. And I could see the fear and the tenseness and the like, oh my God, here we are in the same room. And I looked into his eyes, and I looked for Baba, and I'm like, I know you're there. There you are. And I just felt so much love. And he looked at me, and he saw me staring at him, and something happened to him where he just completely relaxed. And then we had that moment, and everything was okay.
Wow. That's incredible. Oh.
You've pulled the trigger. This whole thing's pulled the trigger. And if I've just been reviewing some my collection of Rumi and Hafez, and whoop, spilled my water. It's okay now. The warriors tame the beast from the past, so that the knight's hooves can no longer break the jeweled vision in the heart. The intelligent and the brave open every closet in the future and evict all the mind's ghosts that have the bad habit of barfing everywhere. For a long time, the universe has been germinating in your spine, but only a peer has the talent, the courage to slay the past giant, the future anxieties. The warrior wisely sits in a circle with other men, gathering the strength to unmask himself. Then sits giving like a great illumined planet on the earth. So the way of love is all about contradictions, and so this contradictions, this can't do anything about the past. It's all right now. There's only right now.
Robert?
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Robert. Yeah, I also have had my challenges with forgiveness. I had a rageaholic mother. I had a twin brother who committed suicide many years ago.
Sorry.
And it still comes up, and I go back and forth with forgiveness, but one of the things that's helped me is to recognize the suffering that they were going through, and to recognizing that they were sick and suffering, and of course, to recognize some of the gifts I got as well with my mom, because for a long time, I would just refer to my mother as this raging alcoholic bitch, and then I had to stop doing that. I didn't refer to her as I would share about her, and that's how I would share about her, and that was not serving her. And I apologized to her in spirit. I mean, she's passed on. I apologized to her in spirit for my just categorizing it as that, and recognizing what she did give me. She did give me a lot of things, so that was very helpful in my process of forgiveness to recognize the gifts. And of course, with my brother, it's been an ongoing process, even though it's been 45, 46 years. I've written many plays around the subject. Some of them comical, some of them dramatic. It's just been a process. But finding love. I mean, actually, I've spoken to him. I've gone to channeling sessions with spirit guides and spoken to him, and where he has apologized for his abusive behavior in spirit, and I've gotten to just connect with him more and feel love for him today, which I didn't express. I didn't feel when we were very combatant twins. We weren't the classic, loving twins. We were very combatant, but. So I'm really grateful for this subject, and I'm grateful for my ability to come to a place of forgiveness. It's still a work in progress, which is fine.
Thank you for sharing that, Robert. Beautiful. Oh yeah, Rick.
And one of the things that I said was easy was letting go of it. And the exercise brought up an incident in which I realized I most certainly had not done so. So this is a purge as well as a sharing. I was with a group, and the request came out for someone to read Baba, to say Baba's prayers in front of this group. This was a mixed group, some Baba people, some non-Baba people. And I'm fairly shy about that kind of thing somehow, even though I've stood up here and been the moderator for the Northeast Gathering for years. It was not something that was comfortable for me. So I did. I kind of steeled myself and got up and did it. And I felt fairly good about it. It felt like, it flowed reasonably well, and it just felt good doing it. I was happy I had chosen to do that because I enjoyed the experience. And so we got through the 3 prayers and finished that up. And a little bit later, one of the group members came up and said, "Why did you rush do that? You just made a mess of it." These are not these exact words. This is the feeling I carried away from it. So I'm sure the conversation was not nearly as dramatic as that. But that was the sense of it. And again, thinking that, because I worked on this one several times, in fact, with you once. So here it is again.
Thank you for sharing that. Beautiful. I think you should all give yourselves a round of applause. That was amazing. Oh, yes.
The one?
I don't know.
Roberta, the one thing that we haven't talked about is forgiving God.
Mm.
And in my experience, I think that's the most profound challenge.
Mm.
And so I just raised that.
I'm glad you did. In the book that I put out called Forgiveness with Mayor Baba, I have a whole chapter on the forgiveness directions, meaning like compass directions. And I ask, when you're doing this forgiveness work, can you figure out all the directions in which forgiveness needs to flow? And one of them is forgiving oneself, one is forgiving another person, one is asking forgiveness from another person, one is forgiving God or Baba, one is asking God or Baba to forgive you, one is forgiving an entire group of people, one is asking a group to forgive you, one is one group forgiving another group. There's lots of directions. So that I did bring that up in the book. It's a great question, and I think I'm out of time. So thank you for this opportunity to share with you this weekend. I'm supremely happy to be here with you. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.